Folks, my name is Nathan. How's it going, folks? My name's Nathan, and if you aren't quite up to speed yet, Dave's a little under the weather and he asked me to fill in for a video or two. So last week we talked about my very first paranormal experience. Click up there in one of the cards to take a gander at that. And today we're going to be talking about my very first experience with horror movies. And if you have any suggestions on topics you'd like to see me cover, leave them down in the comments below. My first experience with horror movies was, well, it was a long time ago, and like chronologically speaking, because I'm an old man, but we're talking about me being about 4 years old here. So that would put us in, I don't even want to say the year. That's gonna make me feel bad. I bet half of you weren't even, like, I bet your parents were barely teenagers then. So anywho, when I was 4 years old, we had a bit of a Halloween party with all the aunts, uncles, and cousins and whatnot, and my mom thought it would be a good idea to put on a horror between that was a little more suitable to us kids, because I was kind of like the middle. There was a lot of folks that were, you know, between 3 and 6 years older than I was. But to be honest, the movie wasn't a bad choice, but it hit me pretty hard. Now, the movie in question was Ernest Scared Stupid. Now, for a lot of you folks, you might not be overly familiar with Ernest's works, but he, played by Jim Varney, really, really funny guy. And to be honest, one voice you more than likely would know from him would be that of Slinky Dog from Toy Story. Now, the Ernest movies were all really funny, especially for us growing up. You had like Ernest Goes to Camp, Ernest Scared Stupid, like I said. Ernest Goes to Jail, Ernest Rides Again. Like, there was so many of these Ernest movies. But for some reason, Ernest Scared Stupid really got to me. And I think when I kind of describe it here, you'll understand. Now, going back and looking on it, it is quite funny, but upon first viewing, I actually had nightmares for about 3 weeks because of this movie. Keeping in mind, folks, bit of spoilers here. So, the movie starts off and it's old-timey-wimey back in like the 1800s, and the small town like finds and buries this troll. So they trap this troll, and the troll's hideous and it's all gross, and it's got two noses. And he's got like boogers like all over him. He's like slimy. He's always moist. Why do weird creatures always have to be so moist? But then, you know, fast forward to present day, which is actually like early 90s / maybe late 80s in, you know, middle America. As per usual, somebody resurrects the troll through some dumb ritual that, you know, it takes no time to do, and that individual is totally Ernest. Now, this troll, his name is Tantor, I think. His MO is that he literally takes kids, turns them into little wooden dolls, and once he gets X amount of wooden dolls of children, he then brings forth his army of trolls. This in itself, yeah, you know, kind of cheesy, corny, whatever, but 4-year-old me, who has no idea about movie magic or nothing, I'm seeing these kids like screaming as they're like, you know, in like, you know, complete fear, and they're wanting their mommy, and they just like turn into wood. So obviously the movie progresses, blah 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 blah. Even some of like the main characters turn to wood, and yeah, it, like, for a 4-year-old me, super scary. And even though it's a pretty funny movie, like, especially watching back to it now, it is really funny. But like the creature effects that they did on the troll were actually really good and like pretty gross and scary for the time. And like I said, just even the MO, boom, ridiculous. Plus, on top of that, at the very, very end, and I cannot stress this enough, spoilers, you end up finding out like that the old lady who's been helping him out this whole time, her family was like made into these wooden statues years ago back in like old-timey-wimey times, and she has their wooden doll still, but he didn't manage to get the last doll he needed to like bring out his whole army. But upon defeating the troll, she had brought all the wooden dolls, and they come back to life, which even more of a brain mess up, which also totally screwed me up as a kid. These kids come back and everything's fine. Like, they're like, oh, you're so old now, to Eartha Kitt, you know, former Catwoman, who's a village crazy lady slash, you know, the keeper of the wooden dolls from eons past. The mind mess up is the fact that when you really think about it, and this was one of my nightmares, and also kind of reoccurring nightmares after that, was the fact that they were turned into like wooden dolls in like late 1800s, early 1900s. And now we've got like cars and everything else, and all their parents and friends and everybody else is dead. They've missed everything, like the moon landing, the hippies of the 60s, everything. And now they're children in modern day society. Their education level, let's say like grade 6, 7, 8 or whatever they were, wouldn't even amount up to like a kindergarten education now. Either way, it messed me up. One of my all-time reoccurring dreams of like my younger years was the fact that, you know, I could get turned into a doll, and then by the time I came to, my mommy was gone, so was my daddy and my sister and everything else. My sister at the time was like a baby, like just born, I think. And yeah, so yeah, that messed me up. That messed me up a lot. And it's one of those things where it's like, I think when they're writing it, they don't realize like how creepy and how much of like you know, just like a weird thing that can actually evoke like a guttural sort of reaction that was. For me, messed me up real bad. And to be honest, this movie was kind of what I think started me on my skepticism when it comes to a lot of horror movies. And the reason why I say that is because my mom saw that I was having a really rough time for the few weeks after watching this movie, and she really kind of instilled into my head that at a very, very young age, like 4 years old, pretty young, that this is movie magic. That's it. Just movie magic. None of it's real. The troll is a guy in a suit. You know, all these kids were never turned into anything. It was fine. It was just, you know, lights and mirrors and magic and smoke shows, and that's all it was. And so I grew up always trying to find, like, the seams, like, when you'd see, like, you know, somebody in, like, armor, and it's supposed to look old and medieval and whatever, but you can see, like, the seams of, like, the plastic from the molding and stuff like that. I used to always look for that stuff. And Dave will tell you that I'm the worst person to bring to horror movies. You know, because I'm, like, picking it apart. I'm like, oh, that couple over there, yeah, they just had premarital coitus. Obviously gonna die. You think it's a really good idea to split up and everything's gonna be okay? Yeah. Yo, Dad, yo, Dad, yo, Dad. Oh my God, you're totally gonna escape. You're running toward the car, but either you're gonna drop the keys and fumble them and then be like, oh my God, I can't find my keys. Oh God, where'd I go? Ah, it's coming. Ah! Or you're gonna be there like, because for whatever reason, cars don't like to start when a killer's after you, ever. I don't know what it is. I've had vehicles that are like 18, 20 years old, start up like a dime, boom. But either way, it was kind of due to everything that happened when it came to Ernest Scared Stupid that made me that sort of skeptic. Because of the fact that I had to overcome that fear, and the way that my mom did it was the fact that I, you know, she kind of, you know, essentially tore, like I got to take a look behind the curtain and be like, oh, so this is how they do this stuff, yada, yada, yada. And then you start seeing all these little tropes and everything else and blah, 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 blah. And that's why, like, I've never been able to take horror movies as, like, seriously as I should have. Because I always go in and that's it. Like, I'll just be like, oh, okay, well, I can see the wires there. I can see this, and that, and blah, 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 blah. Don't worry, I'm like that with like, sci-fi and stuff, too. But it doesn't hit me as much with that because it's not trying to evoke like a guttural fear and like adrenaline response from me, I guess. I don't know, but it's just, Dave will tell you, I'm the worst guy to take to horror movies because a lot of times I'll like laugh. It's like, you know what's a good idea? What? Let's split up, make sure our cell phones are not charged, and, you know, we're just going to all get into 80-year-old vehicles that won't start and make sure you fumble your keys. Oh, and if two of you can go off and have premarital coitus, like, that would be great. Because you know that all of those people are going to die. At that point, if everybody in that movie decided to just go off and do that in any horror movie, well, that's it. Everybody's dead. Just gone. But either way, that's it. That was my first experience with horror movies. And to be honest, I watched the movie again like a year later after like kind of gaining that knowledge that my mom had given me, and it was fine. Never had an issue with it. Never really had another issue with any horror movie. So maybe I was ruined for horror. Maybe that's what kind of happened there. Just couldn't get into like the belief of it anymore. But I don't know. Leave down in the comments below. See what you think. Am I scarred for life because of the fact that my mother, from such a young age, took away like the majesty, took away the intrigue and the imagination behind everything? Or was I better off because my mom was being really good and I was having a really hard time going to sleep because I thought a two-nosed troll was gonna kill me? But either way, folks, that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you smash those like and subscribe buttons. And, hey, at least our dogs aren't werewolves. Or two-nosed trolls.